Hey everybody, you're watching We the Fandom, where we discuss comic books, pop culture, and the fandom experience. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to see more content. How's it going everybody? Jacob here at We the Fandom, and I just finished watching Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I'm now recording this audio right afterwards, and it was phenomenal. Enough so that I hope they make sequels. Unlikely, I know, but you know what? I was looking forward to this a lot less than I was to seeing new Marvel content. And yet, this 4-hour film ended up being far more satisfying than WandaVision, and I think may end up being more satisfying than The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And that's coming from a guy who is way more into Marvel comics than I am into DC. I'm also not one of those, Snyder bros. I wasn't immensely hyped for this movie. I just thought, I'll watch it and hope that it's a good movie. But I did watch it, and it well exceeded my expectations. And I want to thank Zack Snyder for agreeing to come back and, from the ruins of his film, courtesy of Joss Whedon, was able to retain his original vision and pull all of those broken pieces back together. And I definitely want to thank the fans. Like I said, I'm not a huge Snyder fan, but you know what? I really appreciate those who are, because that fan movement was able to convince Snyder to come back, which in and of itself is an amazing accomplishment, something that few fandoms have ever accomplished. Let's get into this review. And as you can see from the title, it's spoiler free. I will be doing videos with the spoilers in the coming week or so to go over cameos and Easter eggs and such, but I wanted to give people a chance to watch the film first. So first I thought I'd try giving my opinion from the perspective of a comic book fan. And from a comic book standpoint, in this story, are these characters accurate to the comics? Not really. But most if not all people should know that going into it. If you've seen Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, you know that from the get-go, Zack Snyder has had a darker, or some might say, more realistic vision of the DC landscape. We've seen both Batman and Superman kill, which is extremely uncharacteristic of their comic book counterparts. On the bright side, they do at least look like Batman and Superman. With other members of the Justice League, you have, Dude Bro Aquaman, who in the comics is a blonde white guy, but in the movie is meant to be like a Maori Pacific Islander or something like that. He also doesn't act like Aquaman. He acts like the MCU version of Thor, if Thor was like a surfer. And then you have Barry Allen, who also doesn't look or act like the Flash. And I feel like they kind of did him dirty in a similar way to how they did Peter Parker in the MCU, where they had the Flash kind of be like a lot younger than everybody else on the team, and he kind of looks up to Batman and the other heroes instead of being like a colleague. Of course, Green Lantern is still absent from this film, even though it's a longer cut. And instead of Martian Manhunter as one of the founding seven, you got Cyborg. Now, I've read very few comics that featured Cyborg because, honestly, he's a pretty boring character, which is a shame because they made him such a focal point of this film. Well, actually, hold on a second. Let me go back a little bit. Cyborg was a founding member of the League in the New 52, which was the DC Comics reboot in 2011. So if you liked that run of Justice League and, the most previous runs of Justice League, you might actually find a lot of commonalities between this movie and those comics. Now moving on to just movie perspective, this movie clocks in at 4 hours, which can seem like a lot for casual moviegoers, but the good thing is that you will be watching this in the comfort of your own home, which means you can pause, take breaks, and have all the snacks you want. Now, in terms of the length of the film, if you already saw the Joss Whedon cut, the middle of the movie drags on a little, but the beginning is really good, and the ending is absolutely stellar. Another point I want to make is that people like to make the comparison between the DCEU and the MCU about how the DCEU is basically the same, but darker. And other than the aforementioned tilt toward realism that we've seen from Zack Snyder, I believe these movies hold a different tone for a reason. That being, Marvel movies have a bad habit of removing the gravity from every consequential situation with poorly timed humor, or I guess accurately timed humor depending on how you look at it. The DCEU differentiates themselves with a more serious tone, making the films more like traditional films instead of feeling like a jokey comic book on screen. Now some of you may be Marvel or DC fans, but I'm sure there's lots of people who are just watching this as a big fan of Zack Snyder and his films in general, and so that's why you're watching the Snyder Cut. And to those people, I would say it's probably worth the 4-hour watch time. Now, it's pretty hard for me to make an unbiased review of this movie, just because Well, from a purely movie standpoint, just because I am a big comic book fan, and so obviously I'm looking for the similarities between Justice League comics and the movies. But I gave it my best shot. Now, this movie had a couple cameos, one of them pretty interesting and leading to one of the 3 big cliffhangers, which I will talk about in a future video. So again, I am really hoping that they make a Justice League 2 and 3, because there is some great stuff that this movie ends with that is obviously meant to be paid off in sequels. I know a lot of people say that the sequels won't happen. We'll never get the Ben Affleck version of Batman, the David Ayer Suicide Squad cut, or Man of Steel 2 with Henry Cavill, especially with the news of Ta-Nehisi Coates working on a new Man of Steel film. But you know what? Tons of people said that the Snyder Cut wouldn't happen, including Zack Snyder himself in the beginning. With the fans mobilized and through your encouragement and dedication, the Snyder Cut was born. So, never say never. Now, to answer the question posed in the title, was justice served? I'm going to answer it in 3 parts. First, from a movie standpoint, I would say it all depends on whether or not runtime is a big issue for you. Obviously, with the 4 hours to sit and watch a movie, but I think it was worth it from that standpoint. If you're a Snyder fan, this film definitely meets the same tone and narrative quality of his previous films. So if you're a big Snyder fan, I think you also would have enjoyed this movie. From a comic book standpoint, again, I'm gonna have to say no. There was one member of the League I forgot to mention earlier, and that was Wonder Woman, and she's actually the one character that I think has the most in common with her comic book counterpart. So from a comic book standpoint, I would say try not to think about the comics too much. It's a Justice League movie, but it's one man's interpretation of Justice League. But overall, I would say to all those fans who created and took part in the release of Snyder Cut movement, I would say justice was served. Obviously, that's something every fan has to decide for themselves, but I thought it was a great movie, worth the 4-hour watch time despite having seen the Joss Whedon cut. And again, I'm going to reiterate, hopefully more comes out of this. It's obvious that DC kind of makes this seem like it's a one-off, like they're probably not going to do anything like this ever again, but there's definitely more material to be had from this narrative, so we'll see. But that was my spoiler-free review. If there was stuff that you felt I didn't really touch on, like acting or narrative stuff, or really anything that you'd like to see me remark on in the next video, please leave a comment below. As always, hit that thumbs up button, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.